What's going on, everybody? So in today's video, I'm going to be going over the major differences between a good real estate deal and a bad real estate deal. And this could go for fix and flip properties, rental properties, commercial deals, even your own principal residence. And as a full-time real estate investor, I've seen a lot of amazing deals. I've seen a lot of terrible deals. So in this 10-minute real estate video, I'm basically going to cover the major differences between a good and a bad deal. So you're definitely going to want to watch all the way to the end of this video. And that being said, let's jump into it. So the first major difference, and this is more for newer investors, if you're looking at a deal and you're deciding whether or not it's a good deal and you have to be too creative to make the deal work, then it's probably not a good deal. And what I mean by too creative is, like, let's say you're looking at comps and all the comps are 2,000 square feet and this one is 1,000 square feet, but you could add on like a 2-story addition, let's say, and bring it up to 2,000 square feet. While that sounds doable and it sounds like it's a good idea, that's getting a little bit too creative. When you have to build like accessory dwelling units, multi-story like renovations and additions, sometimes that can get a little bit risky and your costs can go way over budget. When you're getting started as an investor, you should start with more of the simple projects where you just walk in the house and you say, okay, kitchen needs to be renovated, floors need to be redone, paint, landscaping, and we list the property and sell it quickly. Once you have more experience as an investor, maybe you've done 5, 10, 20 deals, that's when you can start being more creative and seeing more opportunities where others don't. I mean, I know some investors that will do condo conversions where they might get the neighbor to like deed them 300 or 400 square feet so that they can meet the requirements to build a condo. And then in exchange for doing that, they might give the homeowner a brand new kitchen that deeded them the square footage. So there's all types of crazy things you can do once you understand the zoning laws, construction, comps, everything like that. But when you're getting started, just keep things simple. And that leads me to point number 2, comps. So when you're looking at the comparable sales, you want to have a minimum of like 2 or better yet 3 or even 4 or 5 similarly renovated properties that have sold recently. If you're basing your comps just on like one property, that could easily be an outlier. I know plenty of neighborhoods where there's just one property where maybe a developer completely went overboard and spent, hundreds of thousands of dollars, literally hundreds of thousands of dollars more than other investors would on that same property. And as a result, they did a good job and they got significantly more money for it. However, that's also getting into more of like custom design and custom building and things like that. You want to see like 3 or 4 comparable sales that you could bring your property up to that value. And it's the same with multifamily or any other type of deal. When I'm looking at comps of what I think the property could be worth, I try to use a median value. So I usually get rid of the highest amount. And if my property sells for the highest amount, that's great, but you shouldn't expect that. So I typically get about 3 different comps, and I'll probably get rid of the lowest one, I'll probably get rid of the highest one, and I'll probably say, look, it's going to sell for around this price. And that's what you should too, just to be conservative. Another costly difference between a good deal and a bad deal is the age of the property. And that's not to say to stay away from older properties, but older properties are going to need significantly more renovations than a newer property. And I would consider an older property probably anything before like 1980, maybe before 1990. I'm in an area where there's a lot of houses that were built in like the early 1900s. And so if I'm looking at a property that was built in the early 1900s and comparing it with the same size square footage of a property like built in 1990, 1995, the one in the 1900s might need a full gut renovation, including electrical, plumbing, and probably various other things that just aren't up to date. So you just need to be really careful with these older properties and factor in more renovations. And look, I love an older property. I love historic properties. They're really cool. Just factor in it's going to need a lot more work. The next costly difference you should look out for is the location of the property. And what I mean by that is the property close to like a highway? Is there a power plant nearby? You should look at Google Maps or maybe even drive through the neighborhood and see what's in like the direct vicinity of the property. Or maybe there's a park like 1 block away, which could really help the resale value. But sometimes you'll see these deals, and I've gotten these deals before where I've been very close to pulling the trigger, but it's just a little bit too risky for me. I was looking at one house where it was significantly under the market value, significantly under all the other comps. However, it backed right to like a busy highway. And there was like a cement wall right behind it, but you could still kind of hear the noise, and it's going to turn a lot of buyers off. So be sure you're purchasing a property that's in a desirable type of place, and that there's no like major obstacles to selling it when you eventually do down the road. The next costly difference you should look out for, and this is more if you're still like unsure about the comps, I mentioned what the comps will sell for renovated, but look at what they're selling for in as-is condition on the MLS or even in the tax records. And that should give you a good idea of where you should be. And ideally, you would be under what the previous as-is ones have sold for. When I'm looking at comps of a property that, let's say, sold for $500,000, I look to see what those previously sold for in the past like 6 to 12 months. And sometimes you'll be really surprised. You know, you might have a deal under contract for like 300,000, or maybe you're going to make an offer for 300,000. But then you see in the tax records or you see in the MLS that everyone's been paying like 200,000 for as-is types of properties that you're looking at. So you need to be careful, and you need to make sure that you're like closer to that number, closer to what like the general public has been paying for as-is properties. And ideally, I always try to be like the lowest comp in the neighborhood. So if you can do that, that's even better. The next costly difference you need to be aware of is the basement. So you need to be sure like the basement can be renovated, how much it's going to cost to renovate. You need to make sure the ceiling height is tall enough, usually at least a minimum of 7 feet, because a lot of these older houses you might have to dig out the basement, and sometimes that can be super expensive. Like I mentioned, these older houses, sometimes just to renovate a basement can be 100,000 to make a nice basement suite that's livable, with HVAC, a bathroom, maybe even a little kitchen down there as well. And if you think you're just going to renovate like the top 2 floors, let's say, it can be very challenging to sell a house with an unfinished basement. Those houses almost always sell for just significantly less than a house, obviously, with a fully finished basement. Even if it costs, let's say, like $50K to fully renovate your basement, those houses might sell for a good amount under $50K of comparable properties with renovated basements. So keep that in mind.
Another difference between good deals and bad deals, and this goes more towards flips and rental properties. If it's your personal residence, you can kind of pay basically what the Redfin estimate is. But with investment deals, you want to see a big difference between what you're going to purchase it for and what the Redfin estimate is. And the Redfin estimates and Zillow estimates, they used to not be that accurate, but recently, over the last few years, they've gotten much, much more accurate. Now, it's still not to say this is what it would exactly sell for on the MLS, but it's going to give you a good general idea. And this was actually a property that I purchased recently. And as you can see, there's a pretty good difference here. My intention actually was to renovate this and resell it. So you can see there's a pretty substantial difference, and that's what you want to look for. And you also want to try to get an estimate from Zillow and potentially one other site. So as you can see, the Redfin estimate here is almost $450. When I go to Zillow, same estimate is $480. So hey, maybe I could get more for the property. But let me show you one other site as well, because I usually like to use kind of like a median average, because every now and then a site might be a little bit off and might have an extremely high number or an extremely low number. So here's one other website, and as you can see, they have it at almost 100,000 more than the Redfin estimate. And so this one actually might be a little high. So that's why you really want to get like a general idea of what the different sites think it will sell for, and then just go with a median value. So I'm probably going to say, it could be worth around $450 just, in its current condition.
So there you have it. Those are the main costly differences between a good deal and a bad deal, and just things you need to keep in mind. And I'd say, look, if you still have any questions, just use the 70% formula when you're evaluating deals. And the 70% formula, or also known as the MAO formula, just states that you take the after renovated value, multiply times 0.7, and then subtract for the cost of repairs. And that's going to give you a very conservative estimate of where your offer price should be at. And if you still aren't sure, just get a second opinion. Ask a friend, ask a hard money lender, ask another investor that you know and trust, and see what they think about the deal. So thanks again for watching this video. And if you have any questions, drop them in the comment section below, and I'll see you on the next one. All right, bye.